Eagle Houston, you're looking good.
After 21 hours and 36 minutes on the surface of the moon, it was time for the first people to walk here, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, to start heading home.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, port stage, engine arm ascent, proceed.
In this video, we will look at what the astronauts left behind on what is one of the most significant historical sites that no one has visited since. During the astronauts' takeoff, Buzz Aldrin observed the site from a window, noticing that the engine's spewing exhaust was whirling up moon dust and caused the American flag to tip over, falling to the ground. A special mounting mechanism had been designed for the flag, as with no wind on the moon, it had to be held upright by a horizontal crossbar. The flag itself, however, made of nylon, is not a custom-made product but was ordered through the standard government supply catalog. In addition to the flag, other commemorative items that serve no scientific purpose were left on the moon. Attached on the ladder of the descent stage, there is a metal plaque featuring the signatures of the Apollo 11 crew and then US President Richard Nixon. The astronauts also placed a number of small objects with symbolic meaning on the surface. These items were stored in a shoulder pocket on Buzz Aldrin's spacesuit, and he almost forgot to leave them on the moon, and was reminded to do so by Armstrong while he was already on the ladder to re-enter the lunar module. From there, Aldrin dropped the objects onto the lunar surface. Part of it was an Apollo 1 mission patch to honor the astronauts that had died in a tragic accident 2.5 years prior. Their cabin had caught fire during a launch rehearsal, killing all 3 crew members. The astronauts also left 2 commemorative medals to honor the Soviet cosmonauts Yuri Gagarin and Vladimir Komarov, 2 space pioneers that died in different tragic accidents. Even amidst the Cold War, the aim was to express mutual respect for those who risked their lives for the exploration of space. Another object that was placed to express the spirit of international cooperation is a small silicon disc. It contains goodwill messages from the leaders of 73 countries around the world. In addition, it features the names of Congress members responsible for NASA legislation, as well as names of NASA senior staff. The astronauts also left a gold olive branch as a symbol of global peace. Besides these purely symbolic objects, we can find instruments that were used for experiments, such as this seismometer that can measure ground vibrations. The device, powered by solar panels, records data on the strength, duration, and approximate direction of seismic events and transmits this data to Earth. Unfortunately, just 3 weeks after the moon landing, the device stopped sending data back, presumably because it overheated in the midday sun. The temperature fluctuations between day and night are much more extreme than on Earth. This is because the sun's heat is not absorbed by an atmosphere, which could distribute it and retain it during the night. If we look around further, we find another experiment, the Lunar Laser Retroreflector. It acts as a special kind of mirror reflecting incoming light in exactly the same direction from which the beam originates. This means scientists on Earth can direct a laser beam towards this device, which will reflect the light back to Earth. Since the speed of light is known, this instrument can be used to measure the exact distance between the Earth and the Moon, and it is the mission's only experiment that still works to this day. Other experiments that the astronauts carried out can only be recognized by the traces they left behind. the astronauts took rock samples and drilled into the ground, measuring the resistance. They also hung up a special sheet for the duration of their stay in order to measure the solar wind outside of Earth's magnetosphere. Because the astronauts had to bring this sail back to Earth, only the pole remains on the moon. Close to the lander, we find an area that is cluttered with objects. This is the trash we left behind. A number of rock samples were brought back to Earth, and in order to be able to take as much as possible of those, the astronauts tossed away equipment that had already served its purpose. Also, the black and white camera, which had transmitted both the first steps on the moon and the raising of the flag to a worldwide audience, stayed behind on the moon. In addition to commemorative items, scientific experiments, and tossed away equipment, the astronauts left one other thing behind: their footprints, which are often used as a metaphor for the achievement that this journey represents. The paths that the astronauts took are clearly visible in the moon dust, and they reveal one path that was taken far away from the landing site. Towards the end of the extravehicular activity, Neil Armstrong took the chance and went on an unplanned trip to the Little West Crater. After the astronauts left, the site's condition is expected to only change slow. Not so much in periods of weeks or months, but decades, centuries, and even greater intervals. And so today, more than 53 years after Apollo 11 left, it can be assumed that solar radiation has visually changed the site. Without a significant atmosphere to protect the moon, the intense ultraviolet radiation of sunlight will have an impact on the materials used in the mission. It is widely assumed that the colors of the US flag have faded over the years. In addition, the materials were exposed to the extreme temperature fluctuations, alternating between 14 days of 100 degrees Celsius heat and then 14 days in the dark at negative 150 degrees Celsius. And so, it's likely that the nylon flag is also tattered and disintegrated, as other materials will have suffered and will be covered in dust. Ultimately, however, these are assumptions to the best of our knowledge. What's left is a truly fascinating historical site that, unlike archaeological sites on Earth, is superbly preserved, but yet hardly studyable. Whenever you find yourself far away from home, you might notice that your favorite TV shows are not available. That is because they are region locked. Luckily, this can simply be avoided by using my sponsor NordVPN, as their service lets you choose from dozens of locations, currently limited to planet Earth. This means you can access sites and streaming content that is not available in your own country, thereby expanding what you get from your subscriptions. And I have also found that it fixes a ton of issues common when browsing while traveling, like those websites that automatically default to the local language and currency, or poorly implemented login security that results in you constantly having to re-authenticate that it's actually you browsing. NordVPN has been useful for me in tons of different ways, and the best part is that you can try it with no risk. NordVPN has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so go ahead and try it for yourself by getting an additional 4 months for free at nordvpn.com/neovpn, or click the link on the screen. Thank you so much for watching.